I should have known something was wrong the moment I found the little clay figurine buried beneath the Nile's sand. Its hollow eyes seemed almost aware, as if watching me. The old villager who accompanied me refused to touch it. He whispered a warning I dismissed as superstition. Some doors are sealed for a reason. But my curiosity won. I carried the figurine to my tent, brushing off centuries of dust. That night, while cataloging artifacts, I felt a cold breath behind me. When I turned, nothing moved except the lantern's flame flickering violently. Still, I tried convincing myself it was just desert wind. Yet deep inside, I sensed an ancient presence awakening. And that was only the beginning of the nightmare that followed. A nightmare that would haunt every breath, every heartbeat, as I ventured deeper into Egypt's forgotten darkness.
I placed the figurine, an Ushabti, a servant of the dead, on my work table. Its carved smile looked too fresh, not worn by time. That bothered me. I wrote down its markings, a line of hieroglyphs that didn't match any dynasty I knew. As I studied them, my hands trembled. The symbols translated roughly to, "I serve the one who wakes." I shook off the chill crawling up my spine. The desert was playing tricks on my mind. But then, from outside my tent, I heard footsteps circling, slow, deliberate. The villager was asleep, and no one else stayed this deep in the ruins. I stepped out with a lantern. The sand was untouched, no footprints, no sign of movement, only a vast silence hanging like a threat. When I returned, the Ushabti had changed position. It now faced the tent entrance.
Fear clawed at my ribs, but I forced myself to stay rational. Maybe I had placed it that way earlier. Maybe fatigue was clouding my mind. I lay down on my cot, hoping sleep would bring clarity. Instead, nightmares took me. A dark chamber, torches burning without light, and in the center, a tall figure wrapped in decayed linen, chanting an ancient curse. The Ushabti stood at its feet, whispering in a language I didn't understand. When I jolted awake, sweat dripping, the lantern still burned, but the flame bent toward the figurine, as if drawn by something unseen. I reached for water, but a sharp sting pricked my palm. The Ushabti's tiny clay hand held a grain of sand, wet, as though pulled from a place where sand never dries. At dawn, I carried the figurine outside. The villager gasped and backed away, shouting that it belonged to the forsaken tomb, a place even locals avoided. He claimed the Ushabti didn't serve just the dead, it summoned them. I pressed him for details, but fear sealed his lips. I followed the ruin trail anyway, tracing faint carvings of jackals and serpents until I found a sunken chamber half buried in the dunes. Something inside called to me, a heavy pull on my chest, like unseen hands urging me forward. The heat thickened, the air turning metallic. At the entrance, I found sandstone scraped recently, as if someone or something had forced its way out. A cold breeze drifted from the darkness below, carrying a distant whisper. 3 words repeated over and over. He is awake.
I climbed down, lantern raised. The walls were carved with scenes of judgment. Souls weighed against a monstrous shadow. These carvings were violent, more brutal than any in Egyptian history. At the chamber's end lay a sarcophagus cracked open. Its lid had been pushed from the inside. I froze. This couldn't be possible. No body remained, only deep claw marks dug into the stone, as if something had escaped violently.
My breath hitched when I spotted more sand, wet and clumped, leading out of the tomb. My heart thundered. I ran back to the surface, shouting for the villager, but he was gone. Only the desert answered. When I reached my tent, the Ushabti stood on my cot, but this time it wasn't alone. A second figurine, identical but cracked at the jaw, stood beside it. One I had never found.
The appearance of the second Ushabti shattered any lingering disbelief. I backed away, stumbling, my lantern dropping into the sand. The two figurines pointed toward the west, where the horizon shimmered with heat. And then I heard it, soft footsteps behind me. Turning slowly, I saw nothing but swirling dust, yet the footsteps continued, circling like a predator waiting to strike. I grabbed my journal and ran, heading toward a cluster of broken obelisks half a mile away. There I found the villager kneeling, trembling violently. He swore he had seen a tall figure wrapped in ancient linen, wandering between the dunes, searching for something. Or someone. When I asked what it wanted, he whispered one chilling reply. "It wants the one who freed it." His eyes then widened. "And it's already found you!" That night, we both hid behind the obelisks, watching the moon cast long shadows across the desert. The wind carried strange murmurs, not words, breaths heavy and ragged. The villager clutched a small amulet against his chest and muttered prayers. I kept my eyes fixed on the dunes, afraid to blink. Then, at the far ridge, a silhouette appeared. Tall, motionless, facing us. My skin prickled. The figure didn't move like a man. It glided as if untouched by gravity. The villager whispered the name Nebsut, an ancient sorcerer erased from history for practicing forbidden rites of resurrection. According to legend, his servants, Ushabti, weren't buried with him. They hunted for him, guided him, protected him. As the silhouette inched closer, one thing became horrifically clear. The Ushabti I found hadn't awakened something. It had called him home. We fled back toward camp, the wind howling behind us like a beast let loose. I felt the Ushabti in my bag shift, vibrating faintly, as if eager. When we reached the tents, everything was overturned. Sand covered the ground in swirling patterns, circles and spirals that formed a massive symbol, a summoning mark. The villagers fell to his knees, crying that Nebsut was reclaiming what was stolen from his tomb. I pulled the Ushabti out. Its clay surface was warm, pulsing with a heartbeat that wasn't mine. Suddenly, the ground trembled. Torches burst to life on their own, flames rising unnaturally high. A deep voice echoed across the dunes, ancient and cracked. "Return what you have taken." The villager screamed for me to drop the figurine, but it clung to my palm like molten metal. The desert floor split open, sand spilling into a widening crevice. Blue fire glowed beneath, illuminating a staircase leading downward into darkness. Nebsut's shadow appeared at the edge, towering and skeletal. His face was hidden, wrapped in tattered bandages stained dark with time. I tried to move, but my legs locked. The Ushabti dragged me forward, its whispers now louder, hundreds of tiny voices chanting in unison. The villager pulled me back, shouting a spell he barely remembered. For a second, the Ushabti loosened its grip.
He threw me aside just as a clawed hand emerged from the crevice and seized him. His scream echoed across the entire valley. I watched helplessly as Nebsut dragged him below. The crack sealed shut instantly, leaving no trace. Only silence, only darkness, only the Ushabti's whispering breath in my ear. I stumbled across the ruins, desperate, terrified, my mind unraveling. There was only one thought left: destroy the Ushabti, end the curse. I reached a cluster of fallen statues and grabbed a broken stone shard. With shaking hands, I raised it above the figurine. But the moment the stone struck, the Ushabti didn't break. Instead, the ground groaned and a wave of sand erupted around me. I was thrown backward, choking. The Ushabti stood unharmed, glowing faintly. My skin burned where grains touched. I realized the sand itself was being controlled. A force older than empires, older than the gods. I ran, any direction, no direction, until my legs gave up. When I collapsed, the figurine lay inches away, watching, always watching, and the desert whispered a single command: return.
I awoke to the sky dimming, twilight bleeding across the dunes like ink. The Ushabti sat on my chest, its weight crushing but unmoving. My breath grew shallow. Then the voices came again, a chorus of whispers, coaxing, urging, pleading. They weren't threatening anymore. They were desperate. Free us, free us. Confused, I listened. The Ushabti showed me visions. Hundreds of trapped souls bound in Nebsut's service. Each figurine represented a stolen spirit. Nebsut hadn't risen from his tomb, he had been imprisoned in it along with them. And by disturbing the Ushabti, I had broken the seal. I wasn't the thief. They believed I was the liberator. The desert wind carried their plea. Finish what you began. I realized then, with growing horror, that they wanted me to go back into the tomb and release Nebsut completely.
Against every instinct screaming inside me, I returned to the sunken chamber. The entrance had widened unnaturally, as though welcoming me. Inside, torches blazed to life, lighting the cracked sarcophagus. The air smelled of rot and age. The Ushabti guided me to the far wall, where faint carvings depicted a ritual, one requiring human blood to break the final binding. My stomach twisted. I refused, but the spirits didn't. Sand rose like a serpent, slashing my arm. Blood dripped onto the floor, glowing as it spread. The chamber rumbled. The far wall split open, revealing a narrow passage spiraling downward. I stepped inside unwillingly, dragged by invisible hands. Deep below, I heard slow, heavy breathing. Nebsut waited, and the Ushabti in my hand clutched tighter, as if preparing for what came next.
The passage opened into a massive underground hall. Pillars carved with writhing figures reached toward a ceiling lost in darkness. At the center stood Nebsut, this time fully formed, towering, his bandages hanging like decayed wings. He turned toward me, and though I couldn't see his eyes, I felt them pierce straight through my soul. "You have freed me," he whispered, voice echoing like stone grinding against bone. The Ushabti wriggled violently, then leapt from my hand, shattering on the floor. Instead of clay, a plume of black smoke rose from the fragments, swirling around Nebsut. He lifted his staff, absorbing the smoke into his chest. His form strengthened. "One seal remains," he hissed, "the seal bound in flesh." He extended a long skeletal finger toward me.
My heart thundered. I backed away, stumbling over broken tiles. Nebsut approached slowly, savoring each step. I screamed for help, for mercy, for anything, but the hall swallowed every sound. The spirit's whispers filled my head. They weren't begging anymore. They were apologizing. "Forgive us. Forgive us." Too late, I understood. The final seal wasn't an object. It wasn't a ritual. It was a living vessel. The one who disturbed the Ushabti became the last cage holding Nebsut's power. And that meant me. The sorcerer raised his staff. I felt my body stiffen, my blood freezing. Darkness clouded my vision as he began the incantation to transfer my soul. My limbs turned numb, my breath thin. I could feel myself fading, sinking into an eternal void. And yet, something inside me pushed back. As Nebsut completed the spell, the hall shook violently. Cracks split the pillars. The air screeched with thousands of voices. The spirits, those trapped in the Ushabti, weren't following him anymore. They were attacking him. They surged like a storm, tearing at his bandages, draining his power. Nebsut roared, his form collapsing inward. The ground opened again, swallowing him, dragging him back into the abyss. The spirit's final whisper echoed, "You are the new keeper." The hall sealed shut, the darkness fading as torches extinguished. I collapsed outside the tomb at dawn, the Ushabti pieces scattered beside me. But they didn't stay broken. Before my eyes, the shards pulled together, forming a new figurine, with my face carved into it. And now, every night since, I hear the same whisper, "One day you will return."